Welcome back to 2020 Vision. Our guest this week is Michele Pecoraro. She is the Executive Director of Plymouth 400 Inc. Michele, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you, TK?
All right. That background is Plymouth Harbor, I'm assuming?
This is Plymouth Harbor on a beautiful sunny day. Yeah, it's kind of a neat view of things that people don't see when they look out at the harbor. There's always the Rock, and there's always the Mayflower, and there's always, the whale watch boats, but this is a nice little private corner. So
I wish I was there right now. Plymouth 400 will recognize the 400th anniversary of the Mayflower Voyage and the establishment of Plymouth Colony, the founding of Plymouth Colony, really. It's a huge milestone year in 2020, and much of it has been rescheduled because of the current pandemic. What's the latest news from your camp as you guys ride this out?
yeah, well, the last 8 to 10 weeks has been a journey after 8 years of planning for this. So we've pushed the pause button, basically, the last 10 weeks or so, and on everything that we've planned. But what we've come to appreciate is there's a huge volume of work that's been done that comes from Plymouth 400 and the many partners that we have that's accessible without even attending an event. And that realization really gave us just gave us some pride in what we've been doing. And so our education committee's been very involved. We've collaboratively published a history of Massachusetts with Bridgewater State University and Plymouth Public Schools. It's been a productive several years, and so we're not going to let this put the kibosh on the 400th anniversary.
Yeah, there's so many different facets of what you're creating. One of them is signature events. I mean, these big gatherings. What does the current slate look like for these signature events for the road ahead?
Well, really, in the time that we've been home and sheltering in place for this pandemic, we have reimagined 8 years worth of work over this last 8 weeks, and we have created I think we can call it a runway for this commemoration that now begins with 2 virtual events in 2020, a Wampanoag History Conference hosted by Bridgewater State University, and an hour-long program that will run on NBC 10 and their affiliated stations that highlights our partnerships with our international partners and our local partners. And one of them will highlight our flagship event, Illuminate Thanksgiving. And then in the spring of 2021, we kind of do a slow ramp up. So we're starting with a ceremony of remembrance, which is really, we have some dignitaries coming over from the UK and possibly other places who will do some ceremonial wreath laying around the monuments in Plymouth. It will be more of a media event. People can stand and watch it, but it's not going to be a thing that people will come and experience like an event, like a tall ships type of event. It will be much more of a, not completely closed, but semi-private event. And then the Native American Wampanoag Ancestors Walk, we're planning for May. Again, not the largest of the events that we have planned, but again, a good runway towards, being able to gathering in groups, knowing what our social distancing requirements are going to be by then. And then, of course, our biggest event is June of 2021, which would have been actually this June. And that is the end of June, and that is our Maritime salute to the Mayflower Voyage. And that's a 3-day event. We'll have some smaller tall ships in the, or wooden masted ships in the harbor in Plymouth, which we have not been able to do before because the harbor was not deep enough, but now it's been thoroughly dredged and we'll be able to welcome visiting vessels.
That's good. Well, you mentioned, I would imagine that events of these size and certainly of this significance culturally, and 400 years is a big number. They require the support from dozens of municipal organizations. You mentioned cultural organizations. We're talking across county lines, on both sides, internationally. On both sides of the Atlantic.
Right.
where have you found success in this robust collaboration, and where have there been challenges over the last few weeks of adjusting with all this?
Well, the successes are in our collaborations, as you mentioned. Plymouth 400 has been building really strong collaborations for the last, well, I've been in my job for almost 6 years. And I know that, you know, the board was also building these collaborations prior to that. So they're long-standing collaborations, and we also work with our partners locally, like Plymouth Plantation, like Pilgrim Hall Museum, even Provincetown Museum and Monument. And, you know, regionally, this history took place in more places than just Plymouth.
Right.
It might have been called Plymouth at the time, but for example, Duxbury has a very big stake in this.
Right.
So, you know, and the entire Cape.
Right, Cape
So
Cod.
we have great, yeah, Cape Cod has a big chunk of this history. You know, they landed in Provincetown or at the tip of the Cape first. They explored for probably 6 weeks. So a lot of people have a stake in this. Our colleagues in the UK and the Netherlands are so stalwart. They're still moving ahead. Leiden just did their first event virtually, which was a tour of the city of Leiden, with many of us sending pre-recorded messages.
Okay.
So that was very exciting.
Where's Leiden?
Leiden is in the Netherlands, and
Okay.
it is,
Know that.
it's only about a 45-minute plane ride from Plymouth, England. However, I'm sure it took them a lot longer on the Mayflower or the Speedwell or whatever ships they took to get across. But, you know, we also have very strong collaborations with the Wampanoag tribes of Aquinnah and Mashpee. We have had great success in bringing their perspective and their history into the forefront of this story, where it has been always. However, it's always been, you know, the Pilgrims and the Native people had a dinner together, and that was Thanksgiving. And there's so much more to this story than just that. So I think these collaborations, working with schools and libraries and cultural institutions, has been our gift, has been a gift to us.
Yeah, and there's so much of it. I mean, everyone's been flexible with the plan. I mean, as you guys have moved it from 20 to 21, I mean, I would imagine it's a big undertaking to get you know, consensus from everybody and make a move, and that's been okay.
It has been okay. You know, every one of our organizations the challenges are in this atmosphere that we're in right now. Everyone has to put the oxygen mask on themselves first. And so all of us, including Plymouth 400, have had to look at our budgets, have had to look at how we can move forward with this without overextending ourselves. And so that has been challenging. But we feel very comfortable now that, at least for Plymouth 400, our newly revised plan fits within our budget and our abilities to do these virtual and live events.
Yeah, and some of the virtual stuff that I saw on the site is so much related to education. There's so much, there's a big educational component here for this. So how online, I mean, that's just one example of how some things have moved virtually for the time being, right?
Oh, absolutely. So there's two things that we've done during this pandemic that have really been fruitful. Unfortunately, because kids are not in school and they're looking for resources other places online, we have been able to work with all of our partners and ask them to, we've created a resources page on the website, which has both virtual resources and things like a book list, a reading list. And so anyone who is a partner of Plymouth 400 can be on that page, and we constantly update that page with new information as people are starting to change from a live event to a virtual event or move their dates. We want to make sure that people are aware of that. That's one thing we've done. The other thing is we keep our calendar, which is the official calendar, as updated as possible. So we ask that all of those partners keep us informed as to what their changes and plans are. And then the next thing, and the other thing that we're doing is, in light of, you know, how everybody needs positive messaging right now, we have an event, which is, we call it our flagship event, called Illuminate Thanksgiving. And that event, the themes of that are, it's youth oriented, and it's all about giving thanks and giving back to your community, your country, and your world. And so those messages are so fitting right now. So we created hashtag Illuminate Now, and we ask people to do, you know, short videos or send us photos of, you know, how they are grateful right now, why they're grateful, and how they're giving back, if they are giving back, in ways that can be as simple as, we have not left the house except to go to the supermarket because we don't want to, you know, spread this infection.
Yeah, and seems that, so I mean, the website is really a hub that's just loaded up with good stuff. Yeah. What is that website?
So the website is Plymouth400inc.org. Okay. That's Plymouth spelled the traditional way. Yeah. Plymouth, Plymouth.
I can probably put it down here. I'll put it down here, I think. I'm figuring.
Okay, good. 400inc.org. But yes, we are we're on top of that site. We just put up our new slate of events that I mentioned earlier to you. And so, you know, if somebody didn't get that, it's all up there on the website as far as what Plymouth 400 is responsible for, those signature events. Yeah,
well, this is a big occurrence. I mean, 400, my goodness, no one else has been there yet. And no one else has been here yet either, frankly, in relation to the pandemic. But it's been good to check in and see how you guys are navigating the maneuvering of all this, of all this.
It's tricky, but I mean, part of the comfort of doing this is everyone's in the same boat. This isn't something that just happened to Massachusetts or to Plymouth or to Boston or to the United States. I mean, our colleagues all over the world are in the same situation. So we've had to really think outside of the box to make this all work. And I think, you know, we've got a good plan now. And it's all subject to change, of course, depending on the guidelines and how this COVID virus progresses.
Continues, yeah. Well, as it does, and as your planning continues, maybe we'll check in with you again as we get closer to some of these big events. The Thanksgiving campaign sounds really exciting. But for now, we'll wrap it up.
Yes, I would love that.
Michele Pecoraro, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, TK.